Hello, my friends. This is the podcast for the Voters Union of Accountability Nation. And today, remotely, we have our first guest. We're very fortunate to have Fred Satilli with us. Fred, good to have you with us. And why don't you go ahead and introduce the first topic for today?
Well, thank you, Fred, and thanks for having me on the show. What we have to do is change the very philosophy of the voter.
Yeah, well, I do know where you're going with this. We talked a little bit about it before the show, and most people think that they get a vote and they have a right to vote. They don't take it philosophically as a right to a responsibility. Your vote is a responsibility to do the right thing.
With responsibility comes accountability. You know, we vote for these candidates, but there really are no candidates. There are only issues. We should be voting for an issue, and we should pick a candidate that supports that issue.
Something that keeps going around and around the internet. You see it every 6 months or an election season. Somebody makes a list of things the voters want, and it's the same list. They want reduced government. They want government officials to stop giving them raises. They want term limits. You see that on there. They want the government to use the same medical plan that we do. They want to stop pensions for government. There's a whole list of stuff like that. And the problem is, of course, is that since the government is the one that votes for these things, it never even comes up, because they're not going to vote to limit their own power or their own benefits or anything for themselves. They just want to increase. They're never going to cut back on behalf of the voters' wishes.
Well, that's all great stuff. And the only way that's ever going to make it on the ballot is if we put it on there as an initiative.
Okay, not everybody understands that. Why don't you go ahead and explain what an initiative is?
Well, an initiative is simply this. We have legislators. We want to put things on the ballot, but legislators will never put those things on. We as voters have an ability to put things on the ballot that haven't gone through the legislature. It's called an initiative. It's the way that we can create a law and pass a law when we have a non-compliant legislature that won't address what we want them to do, no matter who we put in office. So you take one of those subjects, you pick it specifically, don't get too general, don't ask for a million things, make it real easy for everybody to understand. We want one thing, get it passed, and then move forward.
So which topic should be first?
Well, I would have to say, obviously the most effective first step would be reduced government.
Whoa, I don't want anybody losing their job.
Well, I get that. You're very kind. With this process, no one has to lose their job. Now, let me grab some notes here. I want to get this right. Right now, there are 233,000 state employees making $4 billion a year.
So what about county employees?
Excuse me, that's $24 billion a year. Sorry. Okay, don't get ahead of me. We have county employees, we have 382,000, and these might not be right this minute. This is a year or two old numbers. County employees, we have 382,000 making $26.8 billion a year. Now, if you take the $24 billion and the $26.8 billion, we'll just wave $800 million right out the window. And we'll say 24 times 26 is $50 billion that we would cut. We have $50 billion in pay. If we had a 10% cut, it would be $5 billion. We could literally hand 5,000 people $1 million. How's that for a stimulus package?
And then, of course, you got city employees, municipal employees, right?
Well, you know, cities or municipalities, that's a different thing altogether. Cities are really unique. I know all California counties are somewhat unique, but they're still large block governments. But to pull this off in each individual city in a blanket policy, I think would be wrong. I think local government has to run local government. I think that, I hope at least, that if they see austerity at the state level and the county level and they understand what we're trying to do, they'll kind of realize that they can't get away with exploiting local cities or local municipalities or unincorporated areas. Guys like Ratso Rizzo over in Bell, what he did, I think they'll come under more scrutiny, and I think that that will be a very much a self-correcting problem. At least that's my hope.
Okay, realistically, how much would we save?
Well, you know, that's the kind of question. It's hard to estimate because you're not just going to save salary. You're going to save all these benefit packages, the FICA, the SUI, the disability, things like company cars, the parking space to park those cars, real estate that would no longer be needed as offices were either eliminated or condensed in the size. I mean, I think this is, I think in reality, probably even state employees themselves would see the value of this, and I think that they would vote for this. I think they know about the waste. I'll bet I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't save $1 million a year in pilfered office supplies and postage.
I get it. I see what we do, but how do we do that without cutting jobs out from under real families that really need the income from those jobs?
In a word, attrition. It's easy. 4% of government employees either retire or die every year. The initiative would say that you could not hire a new employee until 2 spots have been vacated. So no one would lose their job. They would pass out of their job naturally through retirement or through death. So nothing would be, there would be no forced problem. There wouldn't be any tyranny. And then as 2 left, 1 new one could be hired. You would literally drop the size of government 2% a year completely painlessly.
Fred, why don't we just say no to all new hires until we reach our goal?
Actually, I'm for that, but it's not practical. What happens is you're going to have vacancies at top spots. Those top spots are going to be desirable, and you want to fill those spots from people outside the existing talent pool. Plus, you want to make competition for those top high-paid spots. If you have people in the existing pool that have to compete with the outside, they're going to have integrity while in office to make their case that they should be the one to get that real good position.
So how long would this process last?
Well, it's easy. If you want a 20% reduction in the size of government, you're having a 2% per year automatic reduction. A 20% would take 10 years. Now, in my illustration, when I read the stats on the amount of employees, I only illustrated a 10% cut, right? So instead of saving $5 billion, we would save just in salary alone $10 billion. That means we could give 10,000 people $1 million a year. Anyway, the whole idea is the 2% would be spread out over 12 months. Everybody doesn't retire and die on the same day. So in reality, the reduction would be less than 1% a month. I imagine that in most places and in most cases that would hardly even be recognized. It's a really painless plan.
But wouldn't that mean that things like social services that are already crying for more staff, wouldn't they be hurt even more?
Not at all. There would really be no reduction in essential services. really, the first thing to go would be completely unessential offices. Then positions in existing offices, as they were stripped down, people would move from unessential services to those essential services. What would happen is a giant process of self-sanitation, and that's really what we want.
Look, Fred, there will always be cronies.
Not so much. I think one of the reasons we have so much cronyism now is because there's no employment or unemployment stress. There's a lot of money just flying around out there with no accountability, and as it starts to tighten, I think that the budgets and the economies of all these departments are going to start to be micromanaged from people within, and things like that are going to be much, much more difficult.
I still say there will always be cronies. Always be cronies.
Oh, I feel you, and you're probably right, but not so much. Because let's use your own example, okay? You said social services. Let's take social workers, okay? We have a need for more social workers. And as the effect of this starts to become apparent to people, these social workers are going to look at each other, and they're not going to put up with slackers. They're not going to they're going to examine their budgets, because as they look for more money to retain people and to hire people, they're going to look where that money is going. Right now, there's no accountability. This installs accountability, and I think that you're not giving the people in these positions quite enough credit. There's a lot of honest people in there, and I think they'll prove themselves.
Yeah, but what if these bureaucrats just say, I'm not going to work any harder than I ever have. I'm not going to embrace the new efficiency. I'm just going to be the same dead wood I always was.
Right. Well, that's where good hiring practices of the new hires comes in. The new hires will understand the new paradigm. They'll understand that they're there for productivity, not just to fill spots. What it boils down to is responsible hiring will have to take place, because people will have to be effective, and they will no longer be able to just, hire young indoctrinated people who have a college loan to pay.
I don't know, man. It seems like an awful big project with maybe a lot of complications, something like that. Things not taken into account.
Please don't let that be the problem. You're expressing paralysis by analysis. You're not going to have all the answers right away. It's not going to be perfect, but it is an evolutionary process that will yield the results. I think that it's going to be so obvious. I wouldn't be surprised, as I said before. I'll bet you even government employees will vote for this.
Okay, well, when it comes right down to it, aren't we going to need like 600,000 signatures?
Yes, of course. 600,000. The government doesn't make anything easy for regular people. If you want access to the ivory tower, it's going to take a siege. Haven't you ever seen one of those castle siege movies? This is a matter of, do you want to do this or don't you? Do you have the stomach to fight or don't you? We have 1,000 of these rootin' tootin' activist groups here in California. If we could bind them all together, we'd have a real winner.
Yeah, well, I guess it could be done. I mean, there's a lot of good people out there with big mailing lists. I remember Travis Allen, and I'll bet the Election Integrity Project has got a huge mailing list. We get a couple of these developed organizations to announce the project and begin to gather the faithful, I guess.
Damn right. And I think any politician, guys like Mark Reed or Susan Shelley or Alex Borum, I mean, these people have huge mailing lists. I mentioned Travis Allen before. That huge mailing lists, contacts with all kind of people. I don't see where this thing, you know what? I'll bet you John and Ken would love to feature this on their radio show.
Yeah, 600,000 legitimate signatures are, they're going to try to stop us from doing this.
Well, now you're making a case for voter ID. That's a whole nother issue. We're not going to go there right now. But you know, Sacramento loves to tear up signatures, so we'll collect 1 million.
We do have 40 million people in the state.
Yeah, and probably 41 million registered voters.
Well, now you're talking about certified voter identity, voter identification. That's a whole nother issue for a whole nother podcast. We'll stay on track here.
After what they did with us with the Wuhan flu, the time is definitely right. Set your sights on 2022 and start fundraising.
Well, okay, if I get it started up, will you promise to work with me on it?
Well, of course I will. Stay in touch. I'll see you next week. Fred Satilli, out.
You see, folks, if you want to take back the state, you don't need a special candidate. You need all the candidates to unify behind a special issue. Capiche? I'm Fred Satilli for the Voters Union of Accountability Nation. I'm going to sign off. Arrivederci.